Good evening. Welcome to a very special MIPJunior world premiere screening. It's featuring the relaunch of a beloved brand. I'm Lucy Smith and I'm the director of MIPJunior, and I'm very excited to welcome you to the world premiere of Thomas and Friends, Big World, Big Adventures. Bravo. This is the evolution of the worldwide and popular show Thomas and Friends, which has been broadcast in over 100 countries and dubbed into more than 30 languages. Throughout the 26 11-minute episodes, this new Thomas and Friends series takes kids on adventures around the world with more excitement and humor than ever before, and with even more extra appeal for global preschool audiences. Now, to tell us more about the show, we're going to be welcoming Christopher Keenan, who's the executive producer and senior vice president, content development at Mattel Creations. Christopher has enjoyed a nearly 30-year career as a successful creative executive, writer, and producer of animation and other kids and family entertainment. At Mattel Creations, he's responsible for development and production teams in London, Wisconsin, and at Mattel's corporate home in Southern California. So we're going to leave it to him to tell you more about how Thomas has been updated and refreshed and is ready to take on the world. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Christopher Keenan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much, Lucy. It's really a pleasure to be here, and what an incredibly exciting way to kick off MIPJunior. As many of you know, Thomas has been around for quite some time. It originated in stories by the Reverend Audrey over 70 years ago. It was then produced in live action by Britt Allcroft, and is seen a tremendous evolution in computer-generated animation. And tonight, we're very, very pleased to be having you join us for the next chapter in Thomas's journey, and that is Thomas' Big World, Big Adventures. What is particularly exciting about this for me is that while some of you have been along for part of this journey, I've only been on the journey for 4 years with the production team at Hit Entertainment in London, but it's been an extraordinary ride, and I've learned that when your best friend is a train, you really can go anywhere. So joining me tonight are two of the key people responsible for what you're going to see. I'd like to introduce Kate Schlomann, who is our Vice President and General Manager of the Thomas brand for Mattel Entertainment, as well as Ian McCue, who is our Senior Director of Content Creative and also is a former Thomas producer, but he is still working very closely with the show. Welcome, Ian and Kate.
Thank you.
And I love this talk show setup. It's very intimate here. So Kate, Thomas and Friends is such a beloved brand and has so many different iterations. What is it that prompted you and the team to explore this new development, and what sort of research brought you to the conclusions to execute the way you have?
So as everyone knows, Thomas is truly a beloved brand. However, he has to remain competitive for today's preschool environment. So what we did firstly, we went out and we conducted research, and this was with parents and with children all over the world. And what we wanted to hear was, what do they love about Thomas, and what else do they really want to see about Thomas?
Well, I'm sure a lot of the Thomas fans will be pleased to know that we haven't messed too much with the core Thomas DNA, and many of the storytelling elements that have made Thomas endure for so many years are still intact. But there are some significant changes. Can you talk a little bit about what some of these changes are, either Ian or Kate?
So we are thrilled to share with you all today that for the first time ever in series content, Thomas is going to come off the island of Sodor and he's going to travel around the world. He's going to visit new countries in the next series. He's going to go to China, Australia, and also India.
That's fantastic. I understand he's also visiting, well, I understand because I produced it, but I understand he's also visiting a number of countries in Thomas' Big World, Big Adventures, the movie. Can you mention some of those?
He's going 5 continents, all the way around the world in the movie. And I want to go back to the research quickly, Christopher, because one of the sound bites we got from the research was a little boy said, trains go places. Thomas is a train, but he doesn't go anywhere. So we kind of thought, yeah, good point. So we hired that guy. He's now head of development, working at Mattel. But it was just that sort of little soundbite that made us really think, actually, that's true. Why don't we explore the world with Thomas? And we started looking back at the Reverend Audrey stories, and the very first book that the Reverend Audrey wrote about Thomas started with the page, Dear Christopher, I want to introduce you to the Thomas tank engine who wants to come out of his station yard and see the world. So 73 years later, we're finally taking him around the world. I think they had some visa problems or passport patrol or something. But yeah, it's really exciting for us.
Well, in addition to the new locations, I would imagine that Thomas is meeting a few new characters along the way, and that we're going to see more female engines than ever before. Can you talk about some of those?
Absolutely. Well, one of the exciting things about taking Thomas around the world, the storytellers, Thomas is all about storytelling. It really opens up our world. You know, we have so more sort of exciting things to write about, from new characters, new locations, just adding new colors from all the countries he's going around, as well as we can do a lot of stories around animals, which we know young children absolutely love. So lots of stories about caring and nurturing for animals in the wild. But for Thomas, the characters is a key thing. New engines, obviously, is a big thing in Thomas. We've had international engines before, but we have new engines coming to the show that he'll meet. So each country he goes to, he'll spend a few episodes there. He won't just go for one episode and then be back home on Sodor. We'll spend 4 or 5 episodes in China, where we'll sort of meet young Bao, who was an engine that we saw in the Great Race, as well as a whole community of new engines. And that will happen with each country. But one of the most important things, and this comes off the back of the movie, is that we're introducing 2 new female engines. We're introducing Nia, who's an African engine, who's going to come and stay on Sodor with Thomas. And we're also bringing another engine called Rebecca, who will also stay on Sodor. And the importance of that is really to just really try and get a better sort of gender sort of ratio balance in the show, because up until now we've had, I think, 6 boys, 1 girl at Tidmouth Sheds, which didn't seem very fair. Poor old Emily was stuck there with all the boys, not fun for her. So we're mixing it up now. We've got 3 boys, 3 girls, and of course our hero Thomas, making it 7. So we're really, really pleased that we're making these changes.
And kids will be introduced to these new engines right from the start in a new song, I understand. Kate, can you talk about that?
Well, this is the thing. We all absolutely love that roll call song, and I know most of this audience could probably sing it if I asked you. But we're going to be sharing with you today a brand new theme song, and honestly, it will get stuck in your head and you'll be singing it for weeks. So we're very excited to be sharing that with you later.
Excellent. With all of these changes, there's been some changes to the format of Thomas as well. And that by format, we mean the traditional 11-minute episodes will now include more than ever and faster-paced stories. Ian, can you talk a little bit more about the changes in format?
Yeah, so the energy of the show was definitely something we wanted to address. We really wanted to sort of bring Thomas up to sort of today's audience and make it more fast-paced, the storytelling. And so we decided to make the actual stories 7 minutes. So the stories are going to be 7 minutes, but we're top and tailing that with Thomas coming to camera and talking to the audience. So the idea is that Thomas will actually engage the audience and actually tell them about this tale he's going to go on, his story that he's going to go on. And he's going to become that storyteller, which we feel is another really big change that we're making to the show. We've got the youthful, energetic voice of Thomas telling everyone the tales, and we kind of feel it's so important that our young audience are going to be, actually talking to Thomas through the TV. We think it's a wonderful thing.
And Kate, I know you were a big fan of having Thomas become our narrator. Can you talk a little bit about why you felt that was so important?
So for anyone in the audience that has little children, they know as soon as they see Thomas, they really see Thomas as their best friend. So if you can imagine every episode opening up with Thomas really engaging with the best friend through the screen and inviting them in on that journey. And when they're with Thomas, they're able to explore these new cultures, meet the new animals, meet new friends, and really learn about these countries through many, many lessons.
There's also a unique new aspect to this iteration of Thomas that we haven't seen before. when we've developed the show in the past, we've always stayed very true to the authenticity of the railway. And yet in this new show, we're taking some liberties with regard to fantasy content. So Ian, can you talk us through a little bit how that makes sense in Thomas's world?
Yeah, I mean, really this is about adding fun to the show, adding humour to the show as well. And we decided to have these sort of what we refer to as Walter Mitty moments, where Thomas will go into a bit of a daydream. We will sort of have him ponder about sort of something that's been said or sort of something he's sort of worried about, and we'll go up into his sort of steam stack, and through his steam we'll see what he's thinking. And this could be anything from, you know, what's it like to be a space rocket? What would it be like to be chased by a real dragon? So it really allows us to sort of go a little bit off track and sort of into these sort of fantasy moments. And I kind of, again, visually, it's just so exciting. It adds another sort of dimension to the new show.
And Kate, as part of the research, I know you did some informal research with some of what we call our super fans recently and shared some of the footage. Can you share what their reaction was?
Well, we showed the footage to them last week, a few days ago. They were absolutely thrilled. I think at the beginning they were kind of concerned, you know, how are you going to take Thomas off the island of Sodor and make Thomas still authentic and true to the original stories, but also exciting and interesting? And they really, really loved the episode that we're about to show you today. But they loved the pace. They loved the CGI. They thought it was really, really funny. And there's some great characters and there's some great moments as well. So they truly engaged, and we got a round of applause. We were thrilled because these are our super fans.
These are the ones that generally criticize us on the internet, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just double checking.
No, it was great. It was great.
Really
Sorry, I just for us it was like sort of because we'd also sort of shown the Audrey family as well. You know, we have, and they really sort of liked what they saw. So I think what's important is we're finding the right balance between sort of re-ingesting sort of some energy into the show, reinvigorating the show, whilst retaining the core DNA of what Thomas is all about. And I think that's where it's sort of working really well for us. And it's important for us to keep that sort of heritage that Thomas has had for 73 years.
And in talking about the new format, and one of the questions that has been posed to me recently is, are we taking Thomas off Sodor permanently? Are all the episodes happening in other parts of the world? And the answer is no, but if you could explain a little bit how this episodic order of 26 sort of pans out in terms of the various countries.
Yeah, so the 26 episodes, we had lots of conversations early on. We took the research, we looked at what we felt would work for the show. And one of the things we were worried about is by taking Thomas around the world, are we going to lose the sort of the values and the community that we have on Sodor? And so we decided, well, we can split the series down into 13 episodes where we retain stories on Sodor. You know, still with the faster pace energy, the new song, and all the great things we're adding to the show. But then we would have the 13 episodes around the world. So we're kind of retaining our sort of core community that our audience know and love, but also introducing lots of new things to the show by taking Thomas around the world and allowing him to be the eyes and the ears of our sort of young audience, you know, discovering the world around them.
So lots of new elements here. We have Thomas going around the world. We have new characters. We have a more equitable gender balance in Tidmouth Sheds. We have a new main title song. We have a new narrator in Thomas himself.
Yeah.
So I would say proof is in the pudding, and the best way to move forward would be to share with you one of our first episodes. This particular episode takes place in China with Thomas working on the railway with his friend Young Bao. So why don't we take a look? Thank you very much. We really hope you enjoyed that. I have to tell you, I'm just overwhelmed every time I see it. Our partner, Jamfil, the studio in Toronto who did the animation, just did a spectacular job. I think you'll agree. So I want to welcome back Kate Schlomann, but I'd like to introduce our two Session 2 panelists, Micaela Winter, who is the producer of Thomas and Friends Big World Adventures, and Maher Nasser, who is and I want to get his title correct, Director Outreach Division of the United Nations Department of Public Information. Welcome to you.
Thank you.
So as part of the re-envisioning of the show, Thomas and Friends production team collaborated with the United Nations to incorporate the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. And Maher, I'm hoping you can tell everyone a little bit about what these goals are and why they are so important.
Definitely. 2 years ago, about 2 years ago now, September 2015, world leaders gathered at the United Nations, and they adopted a set of what we call Agenda 2030, 17 goals, 169 targets to be achieved by the year 2030. You can call them global goals. These goals aim to eradicate poverty and hunger, ensure access to health and education to boys and girls and adults alike, quality education to be exact, water, sanitation, climate change, dealing with climate change, protecting the environment, protecting the oceans, doing all of these things together in a way that guarantees that not only are we improving life for humans, but we're also doing that while protecting the environment. Because what we see today is environmental degradation, climate change that is actually threatening the future of the upcoming generations. And I think world leaders have committed to achieve this by the year 2030. In the first 15 years of this century, we saw another set of goals, and humanity managed to graduate hundreds of millions of people from poverty. So by setting goals, we know that when we work towards them, we can definitely achieve them. So they're not the UN's agenda, they're actually everybody's agenda, they're your agenda.
That's fantastic. And I am going to ask you the question that I imagine some of the audience may be wondering, which is why would the UN decide to partner with Thomas and Friends to achieve these goals?
Goal 17, on the previous slide, if you look at it, it says partnerships for the goals. So partnership for the goals, to be able to actually achieve this by the year 2030, even if all governments put their resources together, they cannot do it on their own. The private sector, civil society, individuals, academic institutions, everybody needs to get in achieving the goals. And to do that, if we only rely on our UN documents and what we produce, I think when you read them, they are written in what we call UNese, which is really,
by the way, we don't dub in UNese yet, but we will.
Maybe you will.
Okay.
So we work with partners such as, of course, Mattel, Thomas and Friends, to simplify the content and make it user-friendly for younger audiences. And I think this opportunity presents a chance for younger generation, really preschool kids, to learn about something that's very important for their future, and hopefully they become global citizens. And by global citizens, I mean citizens who not only care about their own immediate interests, but also their neighbor, their next door country, the planet itself, life on land, life in ocean. And when they grow and they become the leaders, I think they will look back and say, we did it.
That's excellent. And Kate, I'm going to ask you the same question. Why, as the leader of the Thomas and Friends brand, why did you feel it was important to partner with the UN on these sustainable global goals?
So life lessons have always been incredibly important to Thomas and Friends. We've taught many lessons, over the 21 series that we've already produced, and it could be things such as like teamwork and friendship and being helpful, and it really helps parents to talk to their little ones at home and make them better people for the future. So when we were working on this new series, working on these goals and taking these goals into content and taking them into content in an entertaining way where little children can understand them, it really creates a moment in time where we can have discussion at home, which we think is incredibly important. And it really gives integrity to our new content. And we're hoping that through this work with the UN, we can help make better global thinkers for tomorrow for our audiences.
Excellent. And Micaela, Ms. Winter, as producer of Thomas and Friends, can you talk a little bit about what the process has been, how you and the team have actually worked on a practical level with Maher and others at the UN?
Sure. So as I'm sure some of you can imagine, we were all really excited to go out to the UN. And we got there, and they were really excited to meet us, which was a bit of a shock for us, really. But we had a series of workshops where different UN entities came and they spoke to us about the things that were their priorities. And then from that, we started to think about how we could get those important issues into our episodes and where it felt natural to do so. So
Can you give us some examples specifically how the stories and the goals aligned?
Sure. So one example is life on land. We know that children absolutely love animals, and so that straight away felt like a really perfect fit for us. So we've got an episode where Thomas and his friends are in India, and there's some tigers that need help being protected because there's some hunters. So Thomas and his friends work together to kind of make the police aware of these hunters and to, stop anything bad from happening, really.
You gave away the ending.
Sorry.
And can you talk a little bit about the goal of gender equality and how Thomas and Friends has embraced that goal in particular?
Sure. So that was a goal that the UN really challenged us on, and it was something that very quickly became apparent that it was really important. And we worked very closely with some representatives from UN Women who were actually really key in helping us to create NIA, who is one of our fantastic new engines.
And I also understand you worked with the Royal African Society to ensure that you were culturally authentic. Can you talk a bit about that experience?
Yeah, that was also a really interesting partnership. They really helped us. They looked at scripts, they looked at our designs. We really wanted to make sure that the character that we were bringing to life on screen was a good representative of Kenya, where she's from, but also that, she's a strong, empowered woman and someone that boys and girls alike can really look up to.
Excellent. And the character of Nia, whose name actually means purpose in Swahili, is introduced in the film Big World, Big Adventures, but we will also see her when she moves back onto Sodor later in the episodes. But with gender equality being one of the key initiatives, we should take a look at, we have a short clip of Nia that we can take a look at. If we can roll that clip. Thank you very much. And Kate, Nia is obviously a wonderful addition to the STEAM team. Can you talk a little bit more about what it means for Thomas and Friends to have a character like this in the show?
Yes, so about 50% of our audience is girls. And I think it's really important that we start to see girls actually take place in the sheds and become a member of the STEAM team, because we need to have that equality across the show. And this is both for girls and boys watching the show. And working, with the UN on this character, the fact that her name means purpose, she's very, very powerful, and she's a very strong role model for children today. And we feel that's very important for this show moving forward.
So speaking of, sorry, Maher?
I think I just want to say why it's very important for us, because there's no way you can eradicate poverty, eliminate hunger, achieve quality education and good health for everybody without empowering women and achieving full gender equality. Shows that if you go back historically from the 60s and the 70s and show boys are stronger, different ambitions, basically that ingrains in the girl's mind that, oh, I'm not a boy, I can't do that. But I think showing that from a very young age, it's important to full empowerment as they grow older and they claim their right side, full side by the men. We still live in, even in Western countries, there's a pay gap, 23%. Women are paid 23% less than men globally. And if you go to the workforce, in many places they don't have the same access. And if women were given the same economic activities as men, world economy will grow by $13 trillion additional. So there's a win-win for everybody in this one.
Wow. Well, speaking of positive female role models, in addition to Nia's appearance on the island of Sodor, we have another female character who will be making her debut performance in an episode of Big World Adventures, and that is Rebecca. The next episode we're about to show you actually takes place on Sodor and is the episode in which Thomas and Nia meet Rebecca for the first time. So let us take a look at one of our other newest female engines. Thank you very much. And I can promise you that theme song is going to be in your head all night long. With that, we are concluding our panel discussion and our screenings, but before we disperse, I wanted to just quickly ask that the lights come up and I can briefly introduce you to our distribution team who is here with us. Can we raise the house lights for just a moment? Or I can shine my phone at them. Yes. First, we have Alex Godfrey, who is our Senior Director of Content Distribution. Alex, wave for EMEA. We also have Andrea Carpenter, our Senior Director of Content Distribution for the Americas. Anna Garcia, who is with us, distribution for Latin America. And of course, the inimitable Grace Chan, who runs distribution for APAC. Thank you guys. They are going to be here at our cocktail party as well as for the rest of the week. And I want to thank all of you for attending the premiere screening and for supporting Thomas and Friends. I also want to extend a special thank you to Reed Meadham and particularly to Lucy Smith. Thank you so much for your teams and for hosting us here tonight. Last but not least, I'd like to thank our friends from the United Nations who made themselves available for this event, and they will be around all week if you'd like to meet with them and find out more about how you can support some of their sustainable goals. But I'd also like to invite all of you now to join us at the MIPJunior Thomas and Friends cocktail party that will be held over at the Majestic, I believe, and there is a very special Thomas train that will take you from here to there. So come aboard. Thank you so much.